I can see your beautiful face, so I'm hoping the camera can too.
Or else I'll get a paper bag.
Boom! Now, this is spectacular because you got 48 different voices living around here and a little bit beyond to kind of just to keep a diary in one sense of how they were living through lockdown, and then a little epilogue about how they've lived through it and how they felt about it afterwards. Was this a sort of ambitious from the start, or did it just grow?
No, it was purely accidental. Marlena Murphy and myself were working together, and then when the lockdown came, we were sent home. And I have two sisters who are nurses, one of them in Tala, and I can remember we were just so scared, and I thought, I'm not going to sit on my bottom for lockdown. There's no way, I have to do something, you know. And with Marlena, we said, what can we do? What can we do? And so we said, let's do a little podcast and find out, and let's celebrate. All the people were starting to mobilise and get going and everything. So we said, let's do a little podcast. So we started doing it, and Marlena, as people may know who know Marlena Murphy, she's an amazing woman. She just knows everybody, and she knows the right people. It's not just she kind of like, she'd hear about this story and that story, and so the first part, I think there were in excess of 50 interviews over the period for the first lockdown. At the start, there was often tears. Talking to people, there were people like the East Coast mask makers, the two Sineads. We were crying in the middle of that, just about everyone's bravery and stuff like that. And then as time went on, it started to be less about the volunteerism and more about how people were just trying to get back on their feet, because we realised it was not going to be a short-term thing now. This stage, I think I kind of was several months in. And then at the end of the first lockdown, we said, okay, we're done now, it's finished. But what's really nice is, because they were just little podcasts, and there's clouds there, whatever. But then what was really nice was that with each interview, I'd written them up at the time. And I had a feeling I should do this, and I also tried to get them extra coverage in the Wicklow Times and some of the other publications. Just again, it was to propagate the good word. There were good people, and the Irish are amazing people, and look what we're doing. It's a terrible time, but we're doing good in it. And then towards I think it was about a year ago, I said, you know what we should do? Do you know what we should do? That famous line. I said to Marlena, you know what we should do? Let's make a book out of this. So I did the heavy lifting at the start, if you like, but then Marlena came in and she went round to everybody and got the epilogues. So this is about a year later, and to find out how were they doing, what the ideas that they had before, how did they work, how did it finish up, and that to me was the inspiring thing. And one thing that I thought was the most inspiring thing was Glenn, and I think his surname is terrible, but he was one of the blood bike men, and he has a job in logistics, whatever. But he was doing he was delivering the masks with the East Coast mask makers. There's all this community coming together. And when Marlena was following up to him to see how he was getting on, he said afterwards, he said, my daughter said to me, do they think so much of you, you're so important, they put you in a book? And I went, my work here is done. That is the most beautiful epilogue that you could have. Yeah. And I think it's nice too as well. I mean, the proceeds will go to charity, so that's really nice as well. And we're very fortunate. I can't remember all the names of people who helped us in the county council to actually pay for the costs.
Well, Deirdre Burns and all that. We'll list their names again in the text.
I should have brought them with me. But so amazing people who did that. And Sean Kelly, actually, who's not even from Wicklow, from Wexford, he gave the first donation. I said, okay, this is doable now, you know. And obviously to Michael O'Reilly for editing it. Well,
we should say that a big kind of inspiration here was the fact that, I suppose naturally the mainstream media was sort of concentrating on oh my God, what's happening, and what will we do and how will we survive, and there was that need you felt to sort of counter that with just that spirit that people have about helping each other and just getting people to feel that we'll get through this and we'll be fine and we're here for each other.
Totally. But do you know the ultimate irony from Marlena and myself? We did this because we wanted to help, and Marlena is very active. People know her very well in the Greystones community. She's an amazing woman. I can't speak highly enough of her. So we wanted to help. We definitely did. But speaking to those people over that first lockdown, that helped us so much more. Right. It gave us the return. The way it sounds very cliched, to give is better than to receive. But when we reached out to those people, their stories just so impressed us. It gave us sort of hope and joy. So my lockdown, although there was lots of horrible things and terrible fears, and obviously we're in the middle of a war now, so there's more stuff coming out. But I had so many beautiful moments. I feel almost it's unfair. It's so many nice moments because it was just the people. People are amazing.
But I think that key to literally being somebody to talk to, and somebody to share your story, and somebody to listen to your story, it makes it actually a different feeling. It makes it a different experience. The crucial thing that we need to, socialise, and we need to meet people for a coffee, or especially after the lockdown, I think is highlighted that fact that the interaction of other people who are not necessarily living in your house with you kind of gives you a little bit of space, and it also gives you perspective, and it gives you a different taste of the world, and you realise that we're all generally want the same things, a warm bed and a nice food and friends, and it just, that universality comes across, I think, in the book in a big way, that everybody feels, let's get through this, and let's have a
And sometimes I think that we all have our own friend circles, and we have our support circles, and we have different people we reach out to, but sometimes strangers.
Yeah.
So I was a stranger to most of those people that I interviewed. I maybe knew one or two of them, but sometimes a stranger listening to your story can be very powerful, and then have it amplified, and then in a book,
Yes.
And I think the nice idea with the book was that I just thought it's so hard, and even now, 2 years on, it's so hard to remember what it was like at the start of the pandemic. It really, I can't. It seems so foreign and alien, that fear we all had at the very start. I remember we had a first Zoom call with my family, and I was trying not to cry because my sisters were nurses, and I was terrified. They were on the front line.
Right.
I really was terrified. So sometimes it's nicer to have a stranger to speak to validate what you're doing, and that's kind of like, and like that little daughter said, I thought enough of you, Dad, to put you in a book.
And do you feel that I mean, as you put the book together, and as you realise, okay, here's 48 different stories, was there I don't know if there was a kind of a sense of everybody shared a similar arc, that fear turned to, let's do something about this, let's try and help each other, and I would hope that optimism sort of follows soon afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I say Marlena was doing that work in the sense that she was reaching out to everybody to get the follow-up, which was a huge job to do, because in some ways the urgency of the lockdown was gone. The way, so before we could, come on, let's talk about this, everybody was sort of rushing together to do something, and it's hard to motivate people. Just people are busy, and try and get them to come back and remember, where are you and what's happening now. So yeah, it was. I in some ways, I'm jealous that she did that part. Although I was very busy too as well, and it made sense because she was getting that immediate reaction. She was having loads of calls to people. It wasn't just like one call or one email. It wasn't like a broadcast.
Yeah.
She was, because she is a natural born. I don't know. I don't say
Well,
saint. That's
certainly,
too strong.
certainly has a great strength of bringing people together and making things happen, which is a great skill to have.
Yeah.
Part of the Greystones town team, a lot of their work is really just putting people together and figuring out this will work. This is the best way to do this.
She's a lighthouse. She can spot things, and she'll say, "Oh, that's a story," or "That's interesting," or "Have you thought about this?" And I would never have put that person on my to interview list. It never would have occurred to me. And then they were some of the better ones, because wow.
Now, it does always feel to me that, if you were lucky enough to live through the Beatles' time, there's probably a feeling that, hey ho, the Beatles are around. There's a kind of history, I think, we'll look back upon these 2 years, and hopefully it is just 2 years, really, ultimately. Like the Spanish flu, it'll be the world changed, and the idea that we got on with our daily lives, and it went from fear to a certain amount of optimism to, there was times it got frustrating and people were angry and all the rest, but it is kind of a little bit of a historical record, because this is something that people will pick up in 50 years time or whatever, and get a taste of what it was like everyday life, as opposed to just the headlines and the statistics.
And I think it's nice too as well, because there are 50, I think, people in the book. So again, like that daughter, Glenn's daughter, but it's just that people will they'll say, "Oh, I know that person," and they'll read it because of that person.
Right.
And then they might read another one, separate one. I think local history is fascinating like that. I mean,
sure.
It's just you read stuff because you know the street, you know the town. It's not a big history picture. It's not like Poland or like America. It's like, oh, it's the centre of Greystones or something. So I think that makes it interesting.
And would you? I'm guessing you went into this with a certain amount of optimism. I don't know if it altered during the last 2 years, that you yourself had a sense of either, I don't know, doom or sense of frustration, or...
I was terrified, I must say, genuinely. And again, having my sisters in hospitals in Dublin, that was as close as I know we're in a war now, the war going on, but that was as close as I thought I could have. I did study history in college in Trinity, and I love the wars, even though they equally engaged me and appalled me. All things that go on with wars, they're just phenomenal, especially the First World War. And I loved it for that fear, for the hope, for some of the stories. I remember the First World War, there was one captain who went over the top, the whistle blew over the top of the trenches with a football. This English guy, thing. He was shot in like 50 metres. Do you know what I mean? It's just like the utter uselessness and carnage. And so what struck me with the pandemic was that I had two sisters that I was terrified for. This is the very start, and I know it's hard to look back on it, but I was so terrified of my two sisters perhaps being in the firing line.
Right.
That was so difficult.
All right. Oh, how are you again?
Very hot.
Oh, it's very, very hot. It is. We're going to be just finished down. I'll take your picture. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Beautiful, Pierce. Thank you so much. So what I'll do is we'll put the link up to where you can get the book. It will be available we'll list also where the bookshops are. And it is only $9.99, and it is a great little bit of a kind of, because there are so many little moments, you can pick it up, you can grab a story, you can grab another story. But ultimately, I think there is that kind of positivity of just this is how people are when under pressure, and this is what we do. We do this, we pull together. And
Well, I was very grateful that I had the opportunity to do it with Marlena, because I felt that's my bit of the war effort, if you like. That's what I did. What did you do during the pandemic? Well, I tried to keep people happy. I tried to highlight the amazing people that are out there. That's what I like to do. That's so yeah. For me personally, it was an amazing experience, and my friendship with Marlena, as you can probably tell from my great warmth and admiration of the woman, grew so much over the time, and it was a very beautiful time, ironically, because of this.
I kind of feel you should maybe sing a song about Marlena. We seem to be building up to.
That would cry. What are the